thanks. How are you?
I am great. I am so excited to do this with you. Folks, we have Allison Elfin Allen here. Yay! Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, you've introduced my name already, and I don't really know what to say. I became a medium through a series of events that led me to channeling Eric, right? One of those events was that my husband dying of brain cancer, and the destruction of the family, complete destruction of the family, my new husband, his father, all kinds of things just sort of led me to Eric. And when I saw Jamie Butler, I went, I want to be like her.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it kicked off. And then I ended up with the Shiny Show with Carrie Manor and all these kinds of things. You're inviting me now to do this, so it's exciting.
That is wonderful. Allison, I am really sorry. I did not know the full background story. I had no idea that you had been through all that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But I've seen your work. I've watched episodes of The Shiny Show, and I love the chemistry you have with Carrie. You know, Greg and I came to your live shows in Las Vegas, and that was really wonderful. You know, you were an amazing channel. It was really fun. I mean, I loved all of it, but it was just mind-blowing to watch you channel Bugsy Siegel. It was so fun. I mean, especially when that cop in the audience was all fired up, and he's like, you know, interrogating him. It was a hoot.
Bugsy was so like, get over it.
I mean, it was perfect how, you know, it's like you could just see him in you because you totally had his body language. I wrote about it in the blog, but I didn't mention the fact that you were wearing a dress, which made it even funnier. Because like you're standing like you're with your feet hip, you know, shoulder width apart. The hips kind of go forward like a guy. Your hands are in your pocket. It's like I could imagine hearing you jiggling change that wasn't even in your trousers that you weren't wearing. You know, it was crazy.
It was good, wasn't it? Yeah. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah.
It was super.
Yeah.
So I got your little note that you sent saying that you invited Adam in when you were meditating, and he's been hanging around you since you woke up?
Yeah. The minute I got out of bed, he literally waited for me to get out of bed, and he was there. I'm like, oh my God.
That's my boy. I mean, don't be surprised because, you know, half the time he'll show up while you're doing your makeup or in the shower. So that's funny.
I think he was making sure I didn't forget. He obviously knows I'm very forgetful.
Aww. Hi, Adam.
He said, hi, Mom. I love you.
Love you, too. I am so excited about this. So when Adam mentioned that he was interested in working with Allison, I booked an appointment with Allison just to make sure I wasn't making this up, that he's really behind it, because I mean, he told me on the e-board he spelled your name out. So there wasn't much mystery. I mean, we were getting ready to come to Las Vegas to see the Shiny Show, so I knew exactly who he was talking about. And we have aspirations to do Chillin with Adam all over the world. And we cannot wait to go to Australia. We want to bring it to Australia, you know, and we are hoping to get over to Europe, you know, while Emma is still over there. So it's really going to be fun.
That's exciting. If you make it to Australia, we could do a live show.
We will. Greg actually lived in Australia for a while, so we definitely, that's one of the places we plan to go. And I especially loved when I asked Adam what did he have in mind for Allison. He is very impressed with your empathy skills, that you can really feel, you know, what people experienced. And, you know, between what they're feeling and what they show you, I mean, it's incredible what you bring through. And, you know, Adam has a lot of respect and admiration for strong women. And he, I guess, wanted you for that piece. And that's just so exciting. And I was super thrilled with his first choice being Anne Sullivan. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I'm an education specialist, which is a special education teacher. So I worked with children who had learning disabilities before I went into administration. And, you know, my classroom was like a learning laboratory. If there were children who couldn't hear the difference between a sound, like say, for instance, between the short I and the short E. Some kids just can't hear the difference between I and eh. So I taught them to feel it.
Right.
You know, so, you know, I have, you know, a special interest of my own, you know, in coming up with unique ways to teach people who learn differently. So it's absolutely fascinating that he wants to talk to Anne Sullivan. I cannot wait.
I'm looking forward to it too. The last time I remember reading anything about Anne Sullivan, I was in school, history, you know, and that's a very long time ago. So.
Yeah, you and me both, sister.
Okay, right. Well, he's kind of standing over here.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, he said we're ready when you are, Mom.
I'm ready. Bring it. First of all, is thank her very much for coming forward and ask her to share a little bit about herself with us.
All right. Let's see how we go. Well, she says, good morning. I almost feel like we're going to sign.
Good morning.
How interesting. Is that what that means?
This is...
I don't know sign language, but that's just what she did.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, this is thank you. I mean, I know some sign language. I probably forgotten half of what I ever knew. But that's going to be really interesting if she signs, because you're going to have to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Between the two of us, we'll figure it out.
I don't know if she will, but she certainly did that. No, it's probably, if it means thank you, then that would make sense.
I do believe she was saying thank you, yes.
Okay. So she said good evening in your time zone. Good morning in mine. I'm very happy to be here. It's very nice to join the hordes. She's calling it the hordes who are having these wonderful experiences of being channeled, and it's growing at a rapid rate. And I'm just very happy to have this experience and talk to you about anything that you wish to talk about. I obviously assume you want to talk about my life in some way.
I do. It boggles the mind how you were able to take a child who was basically locked inside herself with no communication skills and found a way to teach her.
I instinctively knew that she needed to make contact with her world. Right. That's what was missing. Nobody was giving her the world to make contact with, so she was very frustrated. She had no way of identifying anything. Right. And I just knew instinctively that she needed to start touching and feeling and making that physical, emotional contact with the items around her, so that she could then formulate her own sounds to match it. Right. Because sound actually, when you think about it, a lot of the things that you communicate with, the items in your world that you communicate with, it comes from what you feel about them, right? Right. So let's take the word gay, for example. The word gay has morphed over time. The meaning of it has morphed over time. But when its original meaning was a feeling of happiness, right? Now you can feel that in the word gay. You feel happy. Yeah. And then it became attributed to a group of people who what appeared to be gay, right? The gay, the happiness. Isn't it interesting that a segment of the community, males, for example, who are homosexual, So they were attributed this happiness, this joyfulness, because they had a flamboyance about them, you know. And I'm not saying this is true of all, but I'm just picking up on the nuances of a word and how it changes and how people feel about that word. And so with Helen, she had no way to feel. She needed to feel, and because so many of her senses were shut down, she needed that physical contact. She needed to feel the vibration of it. Communication. Our language, our human language, is very limiting, and so what I needed to give her was, she's a vibrational being. I might not have used those words. I didn't, in fact, use those words. I know them now. And she needed to feel the vibration of the surroundings around her, so that she could bring out her own sounds. So that's basically what I did.
That's amazing. From what I remember, you would put something in her hand. Is that correct? And then form her hand into the shape of the sign for it? Is that correct?
It was a combination. It was a combination of signing and forming sounds. Like from me personally, Alison, I don't know if she could speak, but it sounds like she could make sounds.
She could make sounds, but she couldn't hear or see.
Right, okay. So she wasn't actually not able to speak. She just wasn't able to be taught how to speak in a traditional way. Is that what I'm
understanding? Because she couldn't hear what speech sounded like. She could probably feel the vibration in the throat.
Right. Actually, as you're doing that, that's one of the things that Anne is saying that she used to do.
Put Helen's hand on her throat.
Yes, so she could feel the vibration of sound. And that's how Helen was able to start forming sounds and communicate, right? And so that frustration left her. So because she could now tell people, I want to go to the bathroom. I want to eat something. I'm thirsty. Very simple communications that every being, whether it's an animal or a human, needs to be able to communicate.
Sure. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be? I mean, I can't. I mean,
she shows me that Helen lived in a cage, right? She was a caged animal, right? This was a cage for her. I can see, I know they're not real, but I can see bars.
Felt literally, like a cage,
literally bars around her, and she's rattling the cage to get out.
Right.
And all it took was just knowing that that she needed to feel the environment, and once she was able to feel it, vibration is everything, she says.
Absolutely.
And vibration is everything. So so that's really interesting.
So Anne, how did Helen's parents find you?
She said through a school, some school that Anne was involved with. They came to the school looking, they were desperately looking for help with their daughter. And it looks like they brought Anne to their home rather than to... What I keep hearing is that Helen was just a cage that they could not put her in society anywhere because of her had violent tendencies.
I would think that she would be almost feral. I mean, I think I would be if I had to go that long without having my needs met and had no way to communicate. There has to be a huge amount of anger and frustration. And I can imagine how a child like that would be difficult to manage.
Yeah, so that's what she shows me. That's what I pick up from the energies that they found her through at the school.
Okay.
And yeah, I just keep hearing that Helen was so unruly they couldn't take her out anywhere.
Okay, so was Anne already teaching at a special school?
I hear yes.
Okay.
She was already teaching. Yeah.
So, how long did you work with Helen?
Several years. Several years. That's all I get from that is several years.
Okay, and then you lived there with Helen and her family. Is that correct?
She said she moved in. Yes, it became more or less a full-time dedication for a little while.
Oh yeah.
But she didn't let go of her other obligations. She said she continued her other obligations, even though Helen took up a great deal of her time. Her other obligations, she was able to still meet her other obligations.
What were those? What kind of obligations?
She shows me the school that she was working at.
Uh-huh.
She was still in touch with them. She was still creating with them ways to communicate with children and ways to teach them how to communicate with others, right? So I still maintained that connection, so that she said that Helen didn't take up 100% of her time. It took up a lot of her time.
So, Anne, what was your soul purpose?
That's an interesting question. She says it's a four-pronged question.
Really?
Yeah. So she said, firstly, it was to learn about herself because she had her own disabilities to work through.
Really?
She had an eye problem. I think it feels like, well, for me, it feels like the left eye. And eventually she ended up going blind, right? So she had her own disabilities. So she was learning to be who she was through her own, as she called it, disfigurement, right? Through her own disfigurement. And then through her own learning about herself, she was able to teach others, and most famously Helen, about how to communicate themselves, right? Because she had this little problem. It was only a small problem when she was younger, even though it was distressing. It really wasn't anything remotely. She's comparing it to what Helen suffered.
Right.
She's compared to what Helen suffered. It was nothing. But in my own little world, it was a big thing. But in comparison, I find it really amusing that she's actually comparing her own disability with Helen's and going, well, it was nothing compared to what Helen suffered, right? So
my dad used to say, I was sad because I had no shoes till I met a man who had no feet.
Perfect example. She said exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And so having that disability helped her learn how to teach others and feel for others. In fact, it was one of her defining inspirations to become the person that she did become. She said she was quite feisty at times. So she understood people who struggle children in particular, who struggle to communicate because they didn't have the five senses the same way that, we do.
Right.
So that was the second prong. The third prong was learning about love. Right? She said having a heart is what it's all about. Being human is about having a heart, right? And so many people who are in this life here They don't have a heart. They don't have a heart for themselves. They don't have a heart for other people. So for her, it was about finding that compassionate place where you could help people, communicate, and feel better, generally feel better about themselves. And her fourth prong was she's talking about God. She said her journey, her soul journey, was about honoring God.
Really?
Right. And this is coming from a place before she was incarnated, not as a human. This is a spiritual self communicating it, telling me this here.
Her higher self?
She said it was about, she said God came to her before she incarnated as the higher self, as the oversoul. Right. God was the one that came to her and said, how about this? How about having this life? How about doing this and exploring this and creating this and helping this? And, how about doing that for not just for yourself, but also for other people, and having this soul expanding experience. So there you go. What a beautiful answer.
Oh my gosh, talk about getting your marching orders from the highest possible source.
Yes.
That's incredible. So how did you feel when God asked you to step up and do this?
She said honored. Honored. It's an honor. Emotion. Lots of emotion. She said when we're in a human body and we've forgotten who we are, because that's the whole point of coming, and we forget we're a spiritual being. We forget why we're having it. We don't necessarily see the beauty and the promise that it is that all lives are from the spiritual. So when God, Source, asks you to do something, you're ready for it. Right? It's something that you can do. You will never be asked to do anything that you can't do. You will never be asked to expand outside of yourself. You will always be asked in a knowing way that you can do this, so why not do it? And so it was an honor that God recognized in me that I could take on this monumental task.
So that brings me to want to ask you, what qualifications did you bring to that? Can you share maybe a past life? Or, why you? What had you already done that God asked you to do this?
Right. She said, I had so many lives prior. I have had lives, I focused a lot on disfigurement and discomfort. And so it was actually a blessing to be on the other side for a change. Even though I did have an issue myself, I've had many lives with major disfigurements and experienced the side that Helen experienced. I've experienced that on many levels. So I see, she's actually showing me pictures as we're talking. Okay. So I'm seeing a pyramid, so I take it that she's going back to Egypt. She's talking about being a beggar. Oh, all right. So she was poor, young male, poor, and she'd stolen food. And actually, back in them days, they did something even more atrocious than what they do today, and they took both her hands and both her feet, right? And left her with completely incapacitated. Like, she was already struggling for food, but as this boy was now incapable, I just said, but how did you not bleed to death? She said they were very good at searing wounds. They made sure that you were going to suffer.
They cauterized them. Oh, my God.
They made sure that they were going to keep you alive, right? So...
For stealing food.
For stealing food,
How
yes.
Inhumane.
And so she was a beggar. She had to beg. Right. So she knew she says, I know what it's like to be that person in the cage. I know what it's like to be in the bird cage. And that was probably the most horrific life that she's experienced out of all of them. And she said that life alone qualified her to be Anne Sullivan.
I would think so. That is just amazing.
There's another life she's giving me now as a child where she had very bad rickets. Right, so her legs were something wrong with the bones. The bones are soft, and she couldn't walk. So that was quite a debilitating life. She says she's experienced pretty much all disfigurements you can experience. Yeah,
that's amazing. Were you like a leper ever?
She has been. She says she has been a leper. She was a leper in Italy. Apparently, they had a Leper Island where they put all the sick people who come to
Leper colony. Oh my gosh, you are one amazing soul, Anne Sullivan.
Thank you. She says thank you. But from spirit, it is an honor to experience these things because they show you who you truly are. When you're in spirit, everything is perfect. Your spiritual life is perfect. You are surrounded and encased and made from pure unconditional love. So there are no scars. There is nothing to compare it to. And that is why we come into a life, to have an experience. So we've got an appreciation for how amazing we are as spirits. Yeah.
And then we come here and we forget and we don't know our value.
Yes, but you're educating yourself in your value because you're coming here. Because you can't educate yourself in your value. You can only do it intellectually from spirit, right?
Right.
Because she said everything is friction in the physical world, right? Mm-hmm. Friction, you touch something, you feel it, you see it, you experience it, all on a hands-on basis. So when you're in spirit, there is no friction to work up against. There's no physical friction, there's no emotional friction, none of that is there. So how can you truly know what you are until you've experienced that in a physical body?
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. Very interesting. So, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment? Of course, what you did with Helen Keller is nothing short of miraculous. But I want to know, I don't know, there may be something that we don't know about you. What do you feel proudest of?
She said that Helen is her pièce de résistance, right? Okay. Her zenith, right. Because what she did by taking Helen on, she changed all of society's view about people with these disabilities, right? Yes. They can learn. She said, and it's even more far-reaching than that because it goes to the educational environment of what we consider children who are regular children who have all the senses. Right. They don't even learn the same way. And now it's spawned a whole generation of psychologists who have gone out and said, well, okay, how does this person learn? This person learns in a visual way. This person learns in a hearing way. Mm-hmm. There's all different modalities that what we consider regular children to experience. She said, that's why it's such an honor. It was such an honor. Do you know what this means? She keeps tapping her chest. I kind of feel like this means something.
Honored. I think it means honored.
Right. Okay. She says, that's why it's such an honor because it has had such a far-reaching effect, changing people's opinions. Right? No longer is a child who is deaf or blind thought of as being stupid.
Right.
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 I mean, she says, how superficial is it to think that just because you're missing one of your senses that you are stupid?
Absolutely.
The brain's still intact.
Absolutely. Look at Stephen Hawking.
An amazing example. She said an amazing example of he's developed a whole new way of communicating and a whole new way of because he can't write things on a board. He can't write things on paper. So he has to have that ability within his own mind. Right. So so she's very proud of all of that. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, as a special education teacher, I mean, it really touches my heart too. I mean, I felt an obligation to teach my students about their different ability, and what it meant in terms of the way that they take in information and the way they act upon the world. And basically, I taught them to figure out how they learn best. And my classroom was like a learning lab. And what I would do is, like with spelling words, we would study them a number of different ways. Like we would write them in shaving cream or study them out loud. I mean, there was just different ways. I would experiment with all of their modalities. And what I would do is I'd give them a test. If, say, we started with 10 words and they always got 5 right, just gave them 5. Totally set them up for success. And we studied the way that was most successful for them. But, I mean, the fact that you started all this, thank you. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's why that's why she gives me this connection to God, what an honor it was.
Absolutely.
Because she said, she's making me emotional again. God sees everything. God sees all and knows what the likely outcome of a life. When God approaches you about a life like this, she knows in advance how amazing it's going to be. Right.
That's just wonderful. So what advice would you give to the parent of a child who's nonverbal? I recently read a blog post written by the mother of a young lady. She's in her teens. I mean, and she has to kiss her beloved child goodbye every day and send her out into the world. She doesn't know who's naughty or nice, what she experienced. She can't protect her. She doesn't know how her day was. What a challenge that might be. What do you have to say?
Yeah. She said, and in that instance, that parent is the one who is inside the prison. The walls are around her. And she is the one that has to find a way to break free of that. She is the one that has to find a way to communicate with her child, to get that information in whatever form it can come, whether it's a picture or whether it's a smile or whether it's a sparkle in the eye. She says the mother is the one that has to set herself free there, because she is the one that's surrounding herself with all the things that she hasn't got, all the things that she can't experience. She's lamenting about what she hasn't got instead of focusing like you do in the classroom. What you do in the classroom is you open your mind and you give every child every option available to communicate.
Right.
That's exactly what that mother needs to do. Is to think outside of when we create loss, no matter what loss it is, when we lament about anything that we haven't got, we create a prison for ourselves, right? And it becomes a debilitating space to live in. So any parent who is in that space needs to just throw that thinking out the door and start saying, okay, well, we can't do it that way. What way can we do it?
Right. That was my first thought. Look at the child's strengths.
Yes.
Always start with the strengths.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's a great answer. So you talk about part of your soul contract was had to do with love. Did you find love? Did you find love on a personal level?
She says yes. She did have a husband. But she said he tried very hard to become her husband. She eventually gave in to she said she was a very strong-willed person and her entire focus was on her work. Right. So he knew in advance that it wasn't going to be a traditional marriage. She wasn't going to succumb to the wife and mother traditional role,
Right.
because she saw herself. She said it was almost like an obsession to be who she was, helping people. And so, yes, she did find that. And she said it was nice to have the comfort of somebody to share whatever spare time she did have with.
Did you and Helen stay in touch?
She said all our lives. Right.
That is wonderful. So, Anne, since we're talking about the subject of communication, how do you feel about what people like Adam and I and Allison are doing? Communicating with the dead or people who have transitioned back to the in-between. How do you feel about that? Now that they know they have a forum, they're talking to us. They're sharing amazing information.
Yeah. And she said, and it will continue to grow because the interest is growing. It is. She said, this is manifesting on a grand scale, where she said the interest in the spirit world. She says it's a deliberate event. And it's been worked up for she says it's a collective event. It's been worked on for quite a number of years, and it's going to explode. She said eventually there will be no separation between your physical life and your spiritual life, none whatsoever, because the benefits of separation are now becoming few and far between. How many times can you keep experiencing that kind of contrasting diversity before it becomes, well, enough is enough is enough? How many times can you see somebody go to war? How many times can you send your son off to war and it become like, why are we doing this? Like, why is this happening?
Absolutely.
And people, the spirit world, all our high selves are no longer wanting to play those games. We've experienced them, we've done them, and now we want to experience the contrast in a peaceful way, in a different way, in a way that we can experience our spiritual abilities within the physical body, and they are not frowned upon, or the walls of separation are breaking down. So of course I am part of that, and I'm all for it. And yes, there are hundreds of spirits lining up to have these experiences, not just from their point of view, but also from the human point of view. You'll find that the forum that you are creating, the one that Alison and Carrie have created and Lisa is creating, they are expanding, and they will become the norm. Not, and of course there will still be people out there that will attempt to scorn these things.
Right.
They will always be there, but they will become the few in the future.
That is wonderful.
I think it's wonderful.
I mean, wouldn't it be great if we had a dead people channel on TV?
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
Way to go. We're the forerunners, baby. That is just absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, I really do feel like, those of us who are doing this work, it is our soul contract. It's what we came here to do.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I mean, it could have manifested in a number of ways. There's always many options, but this forum for communication with the spirit world is a wonderful forum, and it's such an enjoyable experience, both for spirit and for the physical, from the physical realm. So yes.
It's absolutely wonderful. I'm just so appreciative of the opportunity to speak with people like you. So let me ask you, are you currently incarnated?
And she said yes. as a little girl. I can see the little girl. I'm trying to get a feel for where. It feels like it's English countryside. And she said, and this is a regular life, what we would consider to be a regular life. There's no deformities, there's no disabilities. This is a regular life, but she is a very intuitive little girl, and she is here to help with the light, bring in the light, and she will do that as she gets older. I'm hoping that she does still become a teacher of some sort. That is on my agenda.
Okay.
For some reason, I heard the name Jennifer. So hopefully, this little girl is called Jennifer. And but yeah, it seems very tranquil. She's in a very loving environment. There's no adversity around this little girl. And Anne said this is probably one of the few where there is no adversity for her. It's going to be a peaceful, enjoyable life, right? From a human perspective, right?
Well, darling, you certainly deserve it.
Yes, she said she does.
That's wonderful. Do you have any last words? Anything that you would like to say? Anything that we didn't ask you that you would like to share, or that you would like people to know about you?
Right. Well, she said, I know it's difficult for people when they are in the physical body to look upon their problems or whatever disabilities they've got, if they've got them. It's hard to look upon them sometimes with a positive spin. But you need to remember that when you jumped into that body, you knew that all the potentials, you knew they were likelihoods, and you also knew that the way you had to deal with them was to find peace with those things, to find the joy in everything. And so that would be my only advice. Stop looking at your problems and any disabilities. Stop looking at them from a negative standpoint and see them as a blessing, because they really truly are a blessing. When you see what you create from the spirit side, when you understand that, you will see that anything that appears to be going wrong for you is really a blessing, because it is put there for you to be able to work out the best way forward.
That is a beautiful message to end with. Thank you so very much, Anne. And thank you, Allison.
You're welcome. That was lovely. She's a wonderful communicator. I felt her passion, very, very passionate.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Adam's clapping. He's like, yay, we got there.
What do you have to say about all this, Adam? First of all, thank you for suggesting Anne.
He said that sometimes he had trouble communicating when he was in a physical body, and communication. He said he had trouble communicating his feelings, right, when he was, and if only he could have got his hands on somebody like Helen, sorry, not Helen, Anne, then, but, so yeah, he thinks it's amazing. He thinks Anne's amazing, and he loves what we're doing. He said, there's a lot of this. I'm asking him, because I've been saying to him, what about, like, my brother wants to do this sort of thing. We are doing it a little bit, just probably not as dedicated as you. And there's other people where their sons or brothers or sisters, they're doing it as well.
Yes.
It's almost sounding like it was a setup. And he went, it is.
It was. I know. It's so funny. I mean, he has to trick me into this, because I'm from a world where, I was a teacher. I had credibility, and people listen to what I have to say. And now there's a lot of people that don't believe in what I'm doing, so it is kind of weird for me. I almost feel like it had to have been planned for me to get a master's degree and spend a number of years in a field where I established credibility to get me to be willing to stick my neck out to do this. But and it's absolutely beautiful, to hear from people, who are receiving such benefits from this, and it's so much fun and it's so rewarding, and I love it so much. And I am so grateful for people like you. I mean, Allison, without people like you and Emma, this wouldn't be possible.
Well, yeah, that's right. But one day, everybody will be like us. Everybody,
Right.
absolutely everybody. Nobody will come in without some form of ability and knowing. There might be a few, but they'll be the minority instead of the majority.
We talk about how time is speeding up, and when it's not it's like what might have used to take thousands of years in terms of evolution can happen in a week, depending on planetary energies. I mean, we are literally going from being carbon-based to becoming crystalline-based. Crystals hold information. We are becoming radio receivers. People are we're all becoming more and more intuitive right now, but the funny thing is, we still think we're making it up. We're still learning to believe it, so it's a work in progress, but it is a very natural piece of the intended chain of evolution, like Anne said.
Yeah. Well, we've had 2,000 years or probably more of organizations, denying us this
Absolutely.
access.
That's right.
So we are up against it, but if you look through the timelines, you can see the wave.
Yes,
you can always see what's coming when you look back, right? So you can project out. So
and I truly believe that those of us who are doing this now, we have incarnated, we've woven in and out of that 2,000-year timeline, and information that we swore to protect with our lives that nobody was supposed to know. We get to tell it on the mountain now, baby. We get to share it. And it's so exciting. I mean, it's like, it feels almost like this is my reward life. This is where, we get to share it. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's right.
So exciting. Okay, perfect note to end on. I'm so excited with this and so thankful for you working with us to bring Anne through. And thank you, Adam. Love you so much.
Jesus, I love you too, Mom.
Bye.